With Mahmoud Ahmadinejad's arrival in the presidency in 2005, a new era began for Iran. With the support of the Supreme Leader and the Conservatives right from day one of his government, the Islamic Republic's ninth, he went on the offensive against his predecessors. Using his popularity, he accused them of incompetence. However, today the opposition and even certain members of his own camp level the same accusation against him.
I think the period of the last 8 years has been the worst since the revolution, for the people too. An incapable leader with no grasp of management, with support from the head of the regime, has taken power, ruining the economy, foreign policy and our culture in the process.
The nuclear development programs enabled Ahmadinejad to shine for the Supreme Leader. But it is more and more responsible for Iran's isolation. Negotiations have dragged on with no result for years, and their failure has led to severe economic sanctions. At the same time, on an international level and from the UN's lectern, Ahmadinejad's angered the West. He blames it for all the world's ills in undiplomatic language.
Ahmadinejad has denied key historic episodes in the world's political history. He uses the language of the streets, the underclass at home and on the world stage, where he claims certain facts like the Holocaust are lies. He does not respect the UN's resolutions. He presents himself as someone who can solve the world's problems with programs to guide everyone. With these political flourishes, he's managed to become the champion of the poor and those who hate the West. And this is what makes him so popular with Muslims in the entire Middle East.
As his first mandate ended, hopes rose among the opposition to get him out of office. But the Supreme Leader once again supported his prince, and a second term was won at the expense of Mir Hussein Mousavi. The election on June the 13th, 2009, saw the start of mass demonstrations, followed by arrests, murders and mass condemnations of journalists and activists. The police and paramilitary militia violently suppressed the demonstrations, sometimes by shooting blindly into crowds. The uprising cost 150 lives unofficially. Ahmadinejad called the vote completely fair and a great victory for Iran. For him, the demonstrations were unimportant. They just raised some dust in the streets.
Ever since Ahmadinejad's been in power, we've been in trouble. And when his second term was greeted with unrest, the opposition was suffocated and put under even more pressure by the government.
Ahmadinejad's 8 years in power have seen 2,670 people either hanged in jail or in public. 60% of the condemned have been executed in public.
Information gets out of Iran despite the censorship, and the data shows that 3 times more people have been killed during Ahmadinejad's second mandate than previously.
The economy has suffered just as much. Inflation hit 30% in 2012, unheard of in the previous 17 years, and unemployment's ballooned to 20%.
I have 3 unemployed adults at home. The government says there's no unemployment, no inflation. The economy's fine and people are living well. It's all lies.
Ahmadinejad's lost ground on this economic front despite his support from the Supreme Leader and the Conservatives, who he nonetheless managed to, at the best, partially enrage by going against some of them. The worst clash came in the National Assembly, where government and parliamentary leaders accused him of cheating, corruption and abuse of power. His protective armour slipped. The Supreme Leader withdrew some of his support and no longer rode to the rescue. He even became critical of the president and his closest advisors. At the end of the day, it's Khamenei who calls all the shots in Iran.
Little by little, Ahmadinejad started to irritate al-Khamenei, and he'll be punished for it. He lacked the proper respect for the supreme leader, and worse, behaved badly in front of him. Ahmadinejad doesn't take risks. He never fought on the front line when Iran was at war with Iraq, and he knows he'll be punished for the way he's carried on with Khamenei. There'll be no place for him in the regime or in political life now, so I reckon he'll go into finance and use the money he's amassed with his entourage while waiting for the supreme leader to show favor again.
Ahmadinejad came to power, pledging to save the nation. But he alienated all his protectors, and the Iranian people will remember him for 8 years of economic sanctions, poverty, and repression.